The banquet hall of the Riverside Marriott had been decorated by someone who tried very hard. There were white tablecloths, small candles in glass holders, and a long banner across the far wall that read, "Westfield High School, Class of 2009, Welcome Home." The banner sagged a little in the middle. Nobody fixed it. About 120 people filled the room. They were all 32 or 33 years old now. Some had gained weight. Some had lost hair. Some had done both. They stood in their old groups without thinking about it, the way people always return to what is familiar, even when familiar is not the same as comfortable. There was a bar near the entrance. Most people had found it within the first 10 minutes. Melissa Crawford stood near the bar with a glass of white wine she was not really drinking. She was a dental hygienist now, married, 2 kids, living 20 minutes from where she had grown up. She had not expected the reunion to make her feel strange. It did anyway. "Did you see the RSVP list?" said a voice beside her. It was Courtney Walsh. Same sharp eyes. Same way of speaking, like she already knew the answer to any question she asked. "I saw it," Melissa said. "Daniel Marsh confirmed," Courtney said. She let that sit there for a second. "I almost fell off my chair." Melissa nodded slowly. "I heard something about him. Something about a company." "Something," Courtney repeated, and smiled the kind of smile that means the other person is understating things considerably. Daniel Marsh had been many things during his 4 years at Westfield High. Quiet was the most common word people used, though quiet was never quite right. He was not shy. He simply did not talk unless he had something to say, which, in a high school hallway, meant he was often silent. He ate lunch alone near the science wing. Not because he had no choice, but because the science wing had a row of windows that faced the parking lot, and he liked to watch the way the afternoon light hit the cars. He noticed things like that. He always had. He was not the kid who was obviously going to be something. He did not have the easy confidence of the boys the teachers called on first. He wore plain clothes. He carried a backpack that was slightly too big for him until junior year, when he finally grew into his height all at once and surprised everyone, including himself. In the spring of his junior year, he entered the school's annual entrepreneurship showcase. Students set up displays in the gymnasium. Parents walked around with paper plates of cookies and asked polite questions. Teachers judged with clipboards. Daniel had built a piece of software. It was not beautiful. The interface was clunky and gray. But it solved a specific problem: small businesses that managed physical inventory, hardware stores, supply shops, small warehouses, were still using spreadsheets and notebooks to track their stock. His software automated that process. It was simple, functional, and fast. He had coded it himself over 6 months, working after school and on weekends, teaching himself from library books and free online tutorials. He had tested it with a real business, a family-owned plumbing supply shop run by his neighbor, Mr. Kowalski, who had agreed to try it and then refused to stop using it. At the showcase, Daniel set up his laptop and stood behind it with a printed 1-page explanation of how the software worked. Kyle Reeder walked past with a group of friends at around 7 in the evening. Kyle was the kind of person high school produces in large numbers and then struggles to explain later. He was good-looking, athletic, and genuinely liked by most of his peers, not because he was kind, exactly, but because he was entertaining and confident, and people enjoy being near confidence when they are young and unsure of themselves. He was not a cruel person at his core. But he had never been asked to think carefully about the difference between a joke and a wound. He stopped at Daniel's display. He looked at the screen. He looked at Daniel. "Dude," Kyle said, loud enough for the circle around him to hear. "Who is actually going to pay money for something this guy made?" The circle laughed. "Not all of them, but enough." Daniel looked at Kyle for a moment. Then he looked back at his screen. Then he reached over and closed the laptop. He did not say anything. He stood there behind the table until the group moved on, and then he stood there a while longer, looking at the closed laptop, and then he packed everything up and drove home. He did not cry in the car. He had already learned that some things you feel only when you are alone and still, not in the middle of a moment. He drove home, parked, sat in the driveway for a while, and then went inside. His mother asked how it went. "Fine," he said. She brought him a bowl of cereal, because that was what she did when something was not fine and she did not know what else to offer. He ate it standing at the kitchen counter and then went upstairs and opened the laptop again and worked until 2 in the morning, fixing a bug he had noticed during the showcase that nobody else would have spotted. He graduated the following year with a 3.8 grade point average. He had 3 friends who came to his graduation party, which his mother held in the backyard with a supermarket cake and too much lemonade. He was happy there. It was small and honest and his. He drove to Columbus in August in a 2001 Honda Civic with a cracked dashboard and 2 suitcases. He had saved a copy of the software on a flash drive, which he duct-taped to the inside lining of his laptop case so he would not lose it. He enrolled in a computer science program at a state university. He worked part-time at a copy shop. He rebuilt the software twice from scratch, each time making it faster and simpler and more reliable. In his second year, he began to understand what the software could really do if it was connected to shipping data, to supplier networks, to real-time demand tracking across multiple locations. He dropped out in his third year to build it properly. His parents were not happy about this. They were reasonable people who believed in degrees and steady jobs and safety. He understood their concern. He also understood that he had something that worked and a window that would not stay open forever. He rented a desk in a shared office space in downtown Columbus. He ate a great deal of peanut butter. He pitched the software to small logistics companies and got polite rejections from most of them and one very cautious yes from a regional trucking firm in Dayton that agreed to a 3-month trial in exchange for a reduced fee. At the end of 3 months, their stock error rate had dropped by 31%. He raised a small amount of funding from a local business development group. He hired a co-founder named Marcus Webb, who he had found through an online forum about warehouse management. Marcus was from Detroit, talked fast, thought in systems, and made up for every social skill Daniel had never quite developed. Together they were, as Marcus once put it, one complete person. They called the company TrackWise Logistics. The next 4 years were not glamorous. There is a version of this story that skips from the humble beginning to the brilliant ending, and that version is dishonest. The middle was long and difficult and full of small failures. They lost a major client in 2014 because a larger competitor undercut them on price. Daniel worked 16-hour days for 2 months rebuilding a feature set that would make TrackWise impossible to replace rather than merely cheaper to hire. He missed his cousin's wedding. He forgot his own birthday. He lived on takeout containers and black coffee and the specific stubborn energy that comes from knowing, at a very deep level, that the thing you are building is real and necessary. Marcus kept him grounded. "You are not saving anyone's life," Marcus would say, when Daniel got too intense. "We are helping people know where their boxes are. It matters. But breathe." Daniel breathed. Then he went back to work. By 2017, TrackWise had 34 employees and was processing logistics data for shipping operations across 8 states. By 2019, that number was 11 regional freight carriers and growing. The software had evolved from a simple inventory tool into a full supply chain intelligence platform that could predict stock shortages before they happened and reroute shipments in real time when delays occurred. In 2021, a publicly traded supply chain firm called Meridian Global began a conversation with Daniel and Marcus that lasted 8 months and involved more lawyers than either of them had ever met in their lives. In March of 2022, the acquisition was finalized. The number was $1.4 billion. Daniel read the final document in a conference room in a glass office building in Columbus. He signed his name. He shook hands. He thanked people. Then he went home, changed into a plain white t-shirt, ordered a pizza, and watched a documentary about container shipping. He did not post about it. He did not call a single person from his high school years. He slept well that night, as he almost always did. He almost did not go to the reunion. Not because he was afraid of it. He was 33 years old and had sat across the table from venture capital firms and hostile negotiators and investors who had told him his idea was worthless. A high school banquet hall held very little that could unsettle him. He almost did not go because he was busy. He had joined the board of a small nonprofit that worked to bring computer science education to underfunded schools. He had agreed to mentor 2 early-stage founders in Columbus. He had a book he wanted to finish reading. Life was full in a way that did not leave much room for nostalgia. But then he found the RSVP form in his email, and something made him click yes. He was not sure what it was. Some small curiosity. Some quiet thing that wanted to close a chapter it had never formally closed. He rented a Chevy Malibu at the airport because he found the ordinariness of it genuinely pleasing. He wore a navy blazer over a white shirt. No tie. Clean shoes that cost no particular amount of money. He did not bring anyone with him. He arrived at 8:14 in the evening, which was 44 minutes after the cocktail hour had started, and almost exactly long enough for 2 drinks to have moved through the room and loosened everything up. Nobody recognized him right away. This was its own kind of observation. He had changed less, he thought, than many of the people in the room. He was taller, or at least he carried himself differently than the 17-year-old who used to hunch slightly at the shoulders. He had the same face. The same quietness about him. Then someone near the bar did a slow double take, the way you do when your brain processes something that contradicts its expectations. The recognition moved from there. Table to table. Group to group. A murmur. A widening of eyes. The particular silence that replaces conversation when something enters a room and changes the pressure of it. He walked to the drinks table, got a soda water with a wedge of lime, and turned around to face the room. Kyle Reeder was standing 20 feet away, holding a beer. Their eyes met. Kyle looked the same way a man looks when he is doing rapid, private arithmetic and does not love what the numbers add up to. He had done well enough for himself, a senior sales position, a house in the suburbs, a family he seemed to love. He was not a bad person. He had simply said a careless thing to a 17-year-old in a gymnasium 15 years ago and had not thought much about it since, because people rarely think about the things they say that cost themselves nothing. Daniel held Kyle's gaze for exactly 1 second. Then he looked around the room for someone he actually wanted to talk to. He found Mrs. Hendricks near the far wall, sitting by herself at a table with a cup of tea. She had been his junior-year English teacher. She was 67 now, recently retired, with the calm that comes from decades of watching young people move through their confusion toward whoever they were going to become. She looked up when he approached and her whole face changed. "Daniel," she said, as if she had been half expecting him all evening. He sat down across from her and they talked for almost 30 minutes. She asked what he was reading. He told her, a biography of a shipping magnate from the 1950s, and a book of short stories by a writer he had discovered the previous winter. She recommended 2 books in return. He wrote both titles in his phone. She did not ask about the company. She did not ask about the number. She asked whether he was happy, in the specific and serious way that good teachers ask things, as if the answer genuinely mattered to her and she would know if he was not telling the truth. "Yes," he said. "I think I actually am." She nodded slowly, as if she had always believed this was where he was going to end up. Later, near the windows, he met Billionaire. He had barely known her in high school, she had been 2 years below him, quiet in her own way, serious about her studies. She was a pediatric occupational therapist now, working with children who had developmental challenges. She talked about her work the way people talk about things they would do even if nobody paid them. They stood together for nearly an hour. They talked about Columbus, about the strange pleasure of building something useful, about what it felt like to do work that required your whole attention. She did not ask what his net worth was. He did not volunteer it. At the end of the conversation, they exchanged numbers, and he meant it when he said he hoped they would stay in touch. At 9:28, Kyle Reeder walked over. He had made the decision somewhere between his 3rd beer and the last 20 minutes of the night, and it had cost him something to make it. That was visible. Kyle was not a man who found apology easy, and he was not offering a full one now, but he was offering what he could. He extended his hand. "Man," Kyle said. "I've been following what you've built. That's genuinely incredible." Daniel looked at him. Not with anger, and not with the cold pleasure of someone who has waited years to stand in exactly this position. Just steadily. With the particular ease of a person who stopped needing anything from this moment a very long time ago. He shook Kyle's hand. "Thanks, Kyle," he said. 2 words. Clear and simple and completely without performance. Kyle nodded. He seemed to want more, some acknowledgement, some exchange, something that would make the moment feel finished. But Daniel had already turned to look at the room again, gently, without rudeness, the way you turn away from something that has no more claim on you. Kyle went back to the bar. Daniel left at 10:15. He said a genuine goodbye to Mrs. Hendricks and told her the book recommendations were already ordered. He made a plan with Priya to get coffee the next time she was in Columbus, which would turn out to be 6 weeks later, and she would become, over the following years, a genuine friend, the kind that you call when something is hard, not just when something is good. He walked out through the lobby, past the coat check, past the sagging banner, and through the glass doors into the parking lot. The night air was warm and smelled like cut grass and the particular end of summer feeling that never quite changes no matter how old you get. He got into the rented Chevy Malibu. He did not sit in the parking lot and think about how far he had come. That was not how he was built. He connected his phone to the car's audio system and put on a podcast about autonomous freight routing, which was a subject he found genuinely exciting, and pulled out onto the highway. Back in his hotel room, he set an alarm for 6:30. He had an early call with his team the following morning about a new project, a mentorship program that would pair experienced logistics professionals with founders in underserved communities. He was looking forward to it. He brushed his teeth. He set his laptop case on the desk, and for a second, he noticed the edge of the old duct tape on the inside lining. The flash drive was long gone, the software had evolved into something he could not have imagined at 17. But he had never replaced the case. Some things you keep because they remind you what the beginning felt like, before anything was certain, when all you had was the work itself and the belief that the work was worth doing. He got into bed. He was asleep in 11 minutes. Outside, the reunion was still going. People were taking group photographs and making promises to stay in touch that some of them would keep and most of them would not. Someone had fixed the banner. It hung straight now across the far wall, bright and steady, welcoming everyone home. Daniel Marsh did not know this. He was already somewhere else entirely. He always had been.